Frankie Laine, Chicago, Illinois. Grew up in Chicago. God,
Yeah.
how did this song, That's My Desire, where did you get it from, first of all?
Well, my first acquaintance with the song came about 1940. I was working in a little joint in Cleveland called the College Inn.
Very well, I know it.
And a little girl came in and wanted to sing.
Uh-huh.
And they hired her after I introduced her, and I'd never heard her. She sounded like Mildred Bailey to me, which was good.
Uh-huh.
And during the 10-day engagement that I was there to listen to her, she sang a song called That's My Desire, which I guess I absorbed.
Uh-huh.
Never really learned it and didn't really listen to the lyric and the melody too closely, I guess, because 6 years later when I first introduced it at Billy Berg's in Hollywood.
That was on Vine Street.
On Vine
Right.
Street. I had it a little wrong in places, lyrically and musically,
Uh-huh.
and that's the way it was recorded.
Became a hit. Frankie Laine, overnight sensation. That was
Yeah,
it.
after 17 years.
Long time. How do you feel about that, looking back? It took you a long time, Frankie, late in your life.
I guess it was my the hand I was dealt, fate.
Uh-huh.
I quit 5 times and went back the 6th time, and that's when it began to happen.
Chicago, grew up in Chicago. What was Frankie Laine before? A singer in Chicago. Always a singer?
Well, I was an altar boy at
Uh-huh.
the age of 10, so all I learned were hymns when I was singing in church. And about when I was about 15 years old,
Right.
I was hanging around with a group of young people who hung around the Mary Garden Ballroom on Chicago's North Side.
Uh-huh.
And one of the girls had a birthday party, and her brother was my chum, and I was invited to the party, and we all began to sing one night at her party, and everybody kind of dropped out and left me singing solo, a song that was popular at that time called Mia Bella Rosa, and it kind of became like every party and every do and every picnic, they asked me to sing.
Uh-huh.
Then at the ballroom, they began to get me up with the different orchestras that played there, and that was my first experience of singing with orchestras.
Uh-huh.
And then a marathon dance came into town
Chicago.
at the ballroom.
Right.
And they got me up to sing there one night, and it was a packed house. There was about 5,000 people, and they scared the bejesus out of me.
What song was it, Frankie?
Beside an Open Fireplace.
Oh, okay.
And Jess Stacy was the piano player who later became quite famous with Benny Goodman.
Right.
He's now 90-something
Is
years
he really?
old. Yeah. He helped me considerably. He says, what song are you going to sing? So I told him. He says, what key? And I says, what do you mean, what key? I didn't even know about keys then. But he says, well, you sound like you sing in the original key. So he says, we'll try that. And I finished the singing and finished the song and turned around and started to walk off. And there was absolutely nothing. So I thought I'd really bombed, But when I reached the edge of the dance floor, that's when it broke. So they turned me around and pushed me back out. And I wound up doing 4 or 5 encores. And after that, every time I was there, they asked me to sing. And that was the beginning.
But I was in a car once, and I turned the radio on, and there's That's My Desire. Definite sound. There's no one, like Joni James has had a definite sound. Johnny Ray had Frankie Laine. Today, the singers don't have the sound. All singers today sound alike, Frankie. You have a style. They say, what do you think about this today, the singers?
Well, some of them are great, and after a while, if you listen long enough, you begin to differentiate.
You do?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And I have my favorites, like you can't miss Paul Simon. You can't miss Lionel Richie. Mel Torme is still very definable.
Yes, well, Mel's. Okay.
He's been around a long time. But I remember in the very beginning when Andy Williams was just beginning to come through, and Steve Lawrence was another one.
Right.
I had a very difficult time trying to figure out who those 2 singers were for a while until they got a hit. Once they got a hit and you began hearing the voice more often, then it was more easily identifiable. And I think the same thing happened pretty much today with the groups when they come along. The only difference is that the groups are a lot harsher these days because of the type of music they're involved in.
But Frankie, when you first came on the radio, they listened to Frankie Laine. They thought you were a soul brother first. Remember,
Yeah.
I mean, they say that Elvis Presley was the first. No, he was not the first. Frankie Laine was
No,
the first.
I wasn't the first either.
No? Okay.
Jack Teagarden, the great trombone player, was also a very fine singer.
Right.
And he sang that way long before I
Before?
did. And I'm sure there was somebody before him.
Before him, okay. But Frankie, they used to say, God, is that a black man singing or what? You know, that's how they did. Frankie Laine, after That's My Desire, such a big hit. You went on tour. What happened after that? What happened? What song came up next after that?
Well, I think we covered Mamzelle. Art
Right.
Lund had the biggest hit, but we had a pretty close second.
The one,
And,
a Small Cafe? Is that the one you're talking
Yeah.
about? Yeah, okay.
And then we caught The Sunday Kind of Love, which was a pretty big hit.
Right.
Then we caught Two Loves of I, which was a pretty big
Right.
hit. And then we really caught a smash, Shine.
Shine, that was it.
And Shine really differentiated a lot of the approach that I was trying to be different, you might say.
Right. Well, you
So-
were different from the beginning, though.
Well, I don't mean the sound. I
Right.
mean in the approach of what I was trying to do. And
Yeah, yeah.
we used the scat intro.
Uh-huh.
And that kind of like was different for the time.
Right.
And then the recording band started, so nobody was recording.
Uh-huh.
And Shine carried me through 1948. And in the meantime, Mitch Miller joined Mercury Records, and his job was to go out and
Right.
find songs. And the first song he found was Lucky Old Son. And I said, wow,
Oh.
this is really different for me,
Uh-huh.
because I was a rhythm and blues singer, you know.
Right.
And we did it, and of course, you know the
That was
result.
it.
It turned out to be a
The
tremendous...
Paramount Theater, 1942, Frankie Laine. Come on.
that's what
Was it
1942.
Wasn't it 42? No, okay.
Nobody knew about me till 1946.
46?
Yeah. That was a mistake in the book.
Oh, well, the book was a mistake. Okay, see, 1946. The Golden Earrings was on the theater bill with you at the Paramount Theater.
You know, I don't remember.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
I remember that.
I remember Billy DeWolf.
Billy DeWolf was there with you.
And the Ray McKinley Orchestra.
Working the first time at the Paramount Theater, the famous Paramount Theater. How did Frankie Laine feel about this?
Well, I was a little scared about being the headliner, so I said, look, I don't mind closing the show, but I think you better get somebody who's better known to be on the bill. And they got Billy, and he was
Billy,
great.
is that Joe Stafford? Good friends.
Oh, yes.
Tell me about Joe Stafford.
Great lady, great singer, great person.
Billie
Loved
Holiday,
working.
come on, you and Billie Holiday.
Well, Billie Holiday, I only got to know. I never had a chance to work with her. She was
Uh-huh.
a wonderful, wonderful singer, and one of my biggest favorites.
Was she? Is that one of your biggest favorites?
Well, I think it would start with Jolson, whom I skipped school to go see when I was 12. Then Louis Armstrong came to town from New Orleans, and I really fell in love with what he did.
And you became friends.
Yeah, but not till much later. I didn't know
Uh-huh.
Louis for a long time.
Uh-huh.
Then Mildred Bailey came through town with the Paul Whiteman Orchestra, and it was her vocal on Rockin' Chair that made me fall in love with that song.
Uh-huh.
Not knowing that later on it was going to wind up being part of what happened to me as far
Right.
as working at Billy Berg's was
Right.
concerned. And then I heard Billy,
Uh-huh.
then I heard Nat, and they were my biggest influences.
Frankie Laine, you're living in San Diego.
Yeah, Point
You
Loma.
wrote a book called that Lucky O Son. That's the
S-O-N.
title of your song too.
Well, the song is S-U-N, and this is S-O-N.
Uh-huh. Tell me about the book. Had hard times in your life, Frankie. Some hard times.
I guess no harder than some people, harder than some, and not as hard as others. Everything is in degrees, and we all get there one way or another if we get there.
Right.
And the road is a little different for everybody, and this happened to be my road.
Tell me about the book. Is it all about your life?
Yeah.
The growing up? You didn't take it from your childhood, did you?
Yeah.
Well, you did take it from your childhood in Chicago.
Yeah.
And-
Most of this was done from tapes that I collected through the years.
Uh-huh.
I always, every time I did an interview like I'm doing with you,
Right. You
I would
collect-
ask for a copy of the tape.
You kept your interviews.
So then I did an interview with a kid from Edmonton, Alberta,
Alberto, yes.
who was a very big fan, Davey Vincent, and he came down to Calgary one day with a big Ampex,
Right.
12 rolls of tape. And I says, what do you expect to do with that? How long do you want to do an interview? He says, as long as you want. And all of a sudden it popped in my head, now was a good time to recap
Right.
the life story.
Uh-huh.
So we did about 6 hours. And it turned out so good for him,
Right.
and the way he told me later that he syndicated it across Canada
Right.
in 26 episodes, like a serial. You know?
Right.
And he was the one who also said, make a book out of this.
It's a great idea.
And that's when I got the idea.
How about a life story on stage as Frankie Laine? Everyone's doing their life stories. Jackie Mason, I think Joan Rivers is doing Sally Marr. Frankie Laine has a great story. I've read a few pages here. You've had some tough times, some good times. You've met some great people in your life. Friends, I mean, you've had some great friends. Pearl Bailey, Joe Staffords. Tell me about Pearl Bailey. There's a great lady. I love her.
Well, Pearl and I became friends, and one time in, I believe it was Washington, D.C., she was working at the Shoreham Hotel, and we had worked there. And we went to see her because we hadn't left town yet. I think she followed me, as a matter of fact, on the bill. And she called me up to sing, and I did a duet with her. You know, we faked the duet. But that's the only time I ever worked with Pearl.
Frankie Laine, I'm looking at you. What's been the biggest lesson that you have learned in life?
Well, I've learned a lot of them. Some good, some bad.
Well, can you share some with us just right now? What would you?
Well, I guess it sounds a little hokey about do unto others and everything in moderation, and try to be kind. I mean,
That's what
so much of what's going on today just scares the hell out of me.
It's not a good world out there today.
It's tough.
Yeah,
it's tough, boy. I'm telling you.
You seem like a very spiritual man. Is Frankie Laine spiritual?
Well, I guess the altar boy training had a lot to do with that, but I think if you listen to I Believe, and if you listen to Lord, You Gave Me a Mountain, and some of the other quasi-religious songs that we've done, you should get a glimpse of what...
Right. Joni James is from Chicago. Joni James, I interviewed her a few months ago when she was in town, and she was saying she started as a choir, as in the choir, and that's where she got her voice developed. And I asked her that same word, and she says, you've got to be kind to other people. And you're saying the same thing.
You should be.
It seems like the Midwesterns are very...
I tell you, if you've ever experienced hurt of one kind or another,
right, it
changes your attitude about how it must feel to be hurt when you're hurting other people.
Right.
And I've always tried not to hurt anybody, so I don't know. That's my philosophy.
So you call yourself lucky? You said you're calling yourself that lucky old son. Do you call yourself lucky,
well,
Frankie?
I've balanced off what's happened to me since it broke open for me in 1946 and 47.
Right.
I had 16 or 17 years of bad luck. Nothing ever seemed to materialize until the final time.
Right.
And I've had 40 some odd years of good luck. So I guess you'd have to say the balance is in the favor of being lucky. That's why I think...
What has been the hardest for Frankie Laine?
Oh, golly. Starvation half the time. Not half the time, but a good portion of the time. I think the toughest, actually the roughest, was the one night in Central Park. I had 4 penny baby roots left. That was all I had. Absolutely broke. It was all I had to eat was 4 penny baby roots. And I spent the night sleeping on the park bench. But compared to what some of the people are going through today, who spend most of their life on the street, now I look at it back, I say, that was nothing what I went through.
You love show business, don't you?
Yeah.
You love to sing.
Yeah. There are parts of it that I'm not crazy about, but I love to sing.
You keep yourself very, very busy, Frankie. Is that your secret of good health and good way of thinking?
No, that's not my secret, because apparently I wasn't doing too well until I had the first heart situation, which was a 4-way bypass in 1985. And then I started trying to take care of myself. I was always overweight, and that really is the killer. And then 5 years later, in 1990, I had to have another 3-way bypass. Since then, I've really turned it on as far as taking care of myself is concerned. I do a treadmill every night, or most every night.
Do you really? Interesting.
And try to do it every night of the week instead of 3 or 4 times. I try to do it 6 times.
So you don't have to walk if you do a treadmill all the time.
Well,
that's walking.
I've always been, like when you go back to the days I was in the marathons, all we did was walk. It was the healthiest thing you could do, but everybody thought we were crazy. So I don't know whether that accounted for the longevity I haven't received, but I think that now with the diet and and cutting out the fats. I'm on a low-fat, low-sugar, low-nothing diet.
Looking back over your life, Frankie, is there any regrets at all about Frankie Laine? Are there any regrets?
Yeah, in some respects, it's a mixed regret because I've said to Nan many times before I lost her in July.
You did lose her just recently.
July 25th on her
Yes.
72nd birthday.
She was a
met her
wonderful.
on her birthday.
She was an actress, wasn't she?
Great actress.
Great, yes, a film actress.
I met her on her birthday and I lost her on her birthday.
Oh,
but
sorry.
we had 43 and a half years together.
Children?
We had 2 girls who live up here. One in Sherman Oaks and one in Beverly Hills.
Are they in the business, Frank?
No.
Yeah.
No, and one's married to a doctor, gynecologist, and Pam is divorced. And I feel that, well, all in all,
Yes.
I've been very lucky.